All right, good afternoon and welcome back, everyone. Today is the day we face our final boss in the Kyoto Gion Open. So coming into round 6, I had 3.5 out of 5. I was sitting good. I was really happy. First time playing OTB in about half a year. And I saw that I was sitting on board 3 for the tournament pairings. So I knew that I was going to be facing someone strong in my last game. And it turned out to be none other than French IM and YouTuber Julien Song. So I haven't met Julian up until this point, but we had a great conversation afterwards. And honestly, that's one of the reasons I decided to get back on YouTube as well. I really enjoyed talking with him about what he does, and I will be linking his channel down in the description. Go have a look. He'll have, unfortunately, mostly French content, I think, but he'll have some good content from his trip to Japan as well, both in Tokyo and in Osaka, I think. So anyway, back to the game then though. I'm sitting in front of an IM for the first time in forever. I actually don't remember if I faced an IM before. And I'm also sitting in front of a YouTuber, so I'm thinking this is a great chance. I really want to play my best, and I want to see what kind of game he brings. So I was also white again for the fourth time in this tournament, which was a bit unexpected, but I can't really change that. Oops, small earthquake, apologies. So I opened with d4, and after basically no thinking, he came with knight f6. We continue, and he plays e6. So now I'm wondering if maybe he wants to play a Nimzo. I'm not really in for a Nimzo though. I'm going to go to a Catalan, so g3, and he plays d5. This is all pretty standard, very main line, Ife and Keto. He just plays knight bishop e7. So he doesn't take, for instance. He's not opening up the Catalan, he's keeping it closed. My knight comes out, he castles, I castle, and here he plays the proper closed Catalan as well with c6, so just a very, very stable position for black. Being the significantly stronger opponent, obviously he has no reason to make things complicated. He can slowly try and grind me down if he wants to, and I'm just going to try and do my best and see what he throws at me. So at this point I go ahead with knight bd2. My thinking is that I can always recapture if I want to, but really I'm going to try and push e4. And I can defend that with maybe my queen out to c2, also maybe rook e1 before I push. And this is really where I'm going to try and build up some pressure with the Catalan. And this is also where the first surprise came, because after knight bd2, he played a5. A5 is still theory. It's not something that has never been played, but it is very, very, very rare in the database. This is more of a sideline. It's not really like mainline theory anymore. I played what the database move would be, is queen c2. I'm just continuing. I want to try and open up with e4, but he also just immediately continued with b5. And I had seen a bit of a reverse. I have seen this position on the board before, but I have never seen the position where they play a5 first. And it's clear to me that black is bringing the game to me, and I have to make a decision here. I considered really only two moves, although afterwards Julian did share with me something that he would have expected as well. So one of the moves he expected maybe was b3, and indeed that is in the database as one of the moves that people play. The two moves I considered, however, were either to push, closing up the position, getting this little bit of area in black's position as well, if I could ever find a way to jump a piece or a knight there, for instance. And also just not allowing them to open up the position on the queen side before I'm ready. The other option obviously would be to take, or just to continue and say, hey, take a pawn, I'm going to go straight in the middle. Because if I push and they take and I take and take here and they do this, then obviously black is also sitting with a fairly bad pawn structure. So this would not be the best for them. However, after some thinking and considering my position, I was a little bit worried to open up with e4 if he could maybe find a way to kind of play it tricky and get a pawn on me. So for instance, what if he takes, let's say he takes this way. My normal position would be that I would push to get his knight out of the way and gain some space, but at this point I'm not sure. I have to still end up breaking all of this down. I didn't really know how to play this position as such. And so I did the move, which I think is probably, unfortunately, not the best one, and I decided to take. It doesn't really matter which way I take, by the way. If I take this way or this way, we're basically just going to open up the C file. Opening up the C file is not a disaster. People have played this in the past. I'm not losing by any degree, but actually in this position right now, I already have a +1 advantage according to the engine. And really, I could have tried to maintain that and play a much slower game with C5. But I thought, yeah, he's probably just looking for me to play c5 and just snore me to death, right? So I'm going to open up the position a bit more. I came here to play. So I take, he takes back, And in this case, I decide I'm still going to be breaking, so I go with e4, thinking that, okay, well, even if he isolates my pawn, I'm getting my king in there, I'm getting my queen in there, I'm getting my other bishop out, and although he's got an isolated pawn to look at, in the short term, I think I've got a fairly good advantage here with this long-term fianchetto target also going down the side. So I did push, but he didn't take. He just defended the pawn. And in this case, always the best move is to push past, especially now because he's triple attacking my pawn. So unless I defend it again, I have to push anyway. So I do push. I cook his knight. And I figure that this must not be too bad for me. And indeed, the position is acceptable. It's equal. Maybe it's slightly better for black just because I didn't immediately take care of that c5 move. But it's basically equal. And now what we see the situation turning into is black is giving me the space on the king side in turn to get the space on the queen side. However, it depends on who can make the game progress in their area the fastest. I can jump this knight to maybe get f4 in, maybe put the knight over here, and then long term I'm trying to break obviously with f5. And black is obviously going to try and come at me on the queen side. So indeed, I did play my knight back. I'm looking to put it over here. I'm looking to maybe push f4 at some point. But black doesn't really give me any time. It immediately jumps their knight to attack my pawn. And now the best move is what I played, but constantly it's feeling like now black is actually taking a bit of a lead because they're making me react to their moves. So knight df3 is the best move. I'm happy to put my other knight there to open up my bishop. I can still bring up my knight to d3 like I intended to, but I was hoping to have just one move still to put this knight up first, and maybe I could have defended my pawn in a different way with my bishop. Anyway, alright, now the rook comes over to the c file, and this is obviously the danger with opening up the file where my queen is on, so got to get the queen out of the way. e2 still perfectly fine. I'm also just kind of looking at their b pawn over here, trying to keep my queen a little bit more active on the queen side because I know that black is not starting to kind of progress on this side, and until I can really stop their progression on this side of the board, I got to make sure that at least I keep a little bit of an eye on their pawns as well. So their queen up, defending the pawn, attacking my pawn doubly, and so I decide to jump my other knight out. Instead of putting it on d3 like I originally intended, I decided to put it on c2, where it can only be attacked once now, right now really with the rook, and I can still maybe bring up my bishop. Honestly, in this case, potentially it might have been faster just to bring my bishop out straight and then decide what to do with this knight. But at this point, I thought that maybe just getting this knight out of the way is good because I also open up my back rank a little bit more for the other rook. Alright, and here black starts coming again, b5. And you see how in the very first few moves already, black has found a way to turn the theory that I know upside down and has found a way to just slowly progress. I'm not losing by any means yet, but they are slowly pushing in my position, and I need to be really careful because the closer their pawns come, the sooner things can escalate, because as soon as they start making contact with my pawns, things can crumble in a good or a bad way. So I bring my other rook over, I'm over defending this pawn, I'm also just getting ready to be able to move one of my other knights maybe. This knight maybe at some point wants to get out of the way for f4. This knight at the bottom here on c2 might be pushed around by a pawn for instance, and then I just want to have the flexibility to jump it around. And here, black just continues taking a bit more space. And this is really, it's not a move that should be a big surprise. Black is obviously able in many situations against d4 to get their light square bishop on the diagonal behind it on this a6 f1 diagonal. However, in this position, it kind of enunciates the fact that they are just really creeping in, because once again, I now have to move my queen to get out of the way rather than progressing my own plan. So I get my queen out of the way. The engine still says, yeah, okay, well, it's not great for you as such, but you're not losing to any degree. And that was the best move, well done. So thank you, engine. And here black continues, a4. So now because my queen is also not looking at any of the pawns, these pawns aren't really sufficiently attacked. I mean, this b1 is incredibly defended with 3 different defenders, and I've got nothing attacking the a pawn, unfortunately. And so they're just coming closer and closer. And now I have to decide what is going to happen after either they play b3 or they play e3, or maybe they jump their knight around and they come into the square here. They can even bring their bishop out first. I'm very, very, very unsure which way I want this game to crumble. I'm sorry, this this queen side here. And this is where I made probably the first move that kind of puts me in a bad position. I decided to play b3 myself. So like I just said now, as soon as these pawns make contact, the game starts crumbling potentially. And what I really wanted to do is get a pawn that defends this c4 square. However, this opens up the c3 square, and I can't put my bishop here because if they push past, obviously that square is taken. So my bishop's going to have to come out on this diagonal, which currently is only 2 squares long, unfortunately. You see how the pawns that black are pushing now are just pushing all my pieces into a smaller and pawner position. It's very, very uncomfortable to try and maneuver your pieces around with so little space. And so b3 was my hope that I could stop their pawn advance and just keep some control over the c4 square, but unfortunately it's not the best move. In this situation, actually, I should have tried to move my knight again and rather continued something like this maybe, and after they go here, I can jump my knight around somewhere else. But I did not consider moving my knights in circles for a third or fourth time. I really was hoping to find a better way to progress. So I put b3 on the board, and now black continues. They're coming in here potentially. They're putting extra pressure on this. And in this situation, I realized, all right, well, here's the problem now. Their rook is coming into the c3 square, and this knight is currently undefended. So it's difficult for me to defend the knight with my queen because then the bishop is still stuck. So I decide I'm going to jump my knight out of the way. And this is where they decide that they're going to take my pawn. Obviously, if I take back, they can bring in their rook, double attacking the pawn because they're pushing my queen out of the way. So I decided I'm not gonna losing a pawn. These are currently double, doesn't really make that much of a difference. I need to get my pieces activated, and I play bishop d2, looking at that square, putting some pressure on the pawn in the back, really just trying to get some control over this position on my queen side. Here they take, I take back. I have to really, there's not much else to it. I also don't want them to just keep this additional pawn constantly. So now black has one additional pawn, but they have way more space and therefore better activity of their pieces. I would love to be able to bring in a piece to this square, for instance, on c5, but because they have so many defenders, I will be losing it along with the pawn behind it. I would also love to put a knight over here, but I currently don't have a knight that can jump there easily because this bishop is covering this knight's progression. So everything's just a little bit uncomfortable for me. So I take that pawn, they jump in their knight. Now they can take my bishop, or they can take, or if they want, they can take my bishop. I decide to put my queen over on the left side. The trick is obviously if I don't put my queen away from this from the light squares, then, if I, for instance, go here to defend a bishop for some reason, and they do this, then I can't take there because my queen will hang. I can take there though, so maybe they'll jump the other way. But at some point, my queen's just going to get in trouble one more time, right? So I decide to put it on b3. It also stops the pawn from advancing. I'm trying to get black to slow down, get my pieces into the game in a bit more of a coherent manner. They trade off, and here obviously the problem persists. So when I lose my bishop, I lose control of the c3 square. So I can take this way, for instance, but after their rook comes down, things look very, very tricky for me. Alternatively, I could have taken with my knight, but then I lose this pawn. And so, kind of by process of elimination, I decided I have to take with my a-rook, although this was definitely not the way I wished to take back ideally, because this pawn does not need three defenders, and I was actually hoping I could maybe pile up on the a file that's open now. So this is unfortunately in the other direction, but yeah, you don't want to go wrong just because you hope for a move. You rather want to play the best move you can find. All right, so black is coming back. They're going to bring in the other knight again to this situation or similar. So now I have a little bit of time. I'm trying to get rid of that light square bishop because this position is a very dangerous one. However, here is something that I did not consider, and this is why my position is not well evaluated by the engine. Black constantly has just one move too many for me. I'm behind in tempi because I've moved too many pieces in circles at this point. And so if I could get maybe one more attacker onto this square that isn't my queen, right? Then maybe I can take what's happening now. But they find a fantastic move. They put their bishop right here on c4. Now obviously the knight can still come in behind and attack this queen as well. They can keep on pushing. But more so the point is that as soon as I take anything on that square, they connect their passer. And now they've got two passes on the B and C file. They're still coming down, and I have no more pawns to stop these. So these are definitely going to be super dangerous. So when he puts the bishop there, I can't take it because I don't have sufficient attackers to take the pawn as well. And so I fall back. I don't want to connect their passer with another one. Here comes the knight. Okay, so I'm deciding what can I do. I'm trying to put some pressure. I see that I have a move here where I can maybe take in this sense if I have another piece attacking because their queen is undefended, right? So their b pawn can't move. All right, here comes the knight. As said, I saw this coming about 3, 4 moves ago, but unfortunately, there's not so many ways to stop it. And at this point, I decided I'm actually just going to attack it from the other side. My problem with attacking it from this side is they don't have to take. So they can, for instance, go here, and after I take back, then they can go in here. And then I either have to take and connect, or I have to not take and let them take and put their pawn even further down and protected with the knight on an outpost. So very dangerous situation. So I jump my knight the other way to try and take that bishop out, and also to try and unclutter the position a little bit. Also, you see now black is to have great control of the b3 square, so they're stopping me from blockading it with a piece. All right. So at this point, I decide to trade. I do take with my knight, and in comes their knight. And here I felt like I was a little bit out of choice because they're also forking my rook. And so if my rook wasn't here, so I don't know, let's just move in circles for a second. All right, let's just move it this way, and then black gives me the pawn, it gives me the move back. If they're only attacking my queen and my knight, I'm super happy because I can take like this, and then I can take like this, and I'm still covering the c3 square, and I still have my queen blocking the pawn, and I can bring my other rook over to the other side. There's a lot more chance for me to find some way to play here. However, unfortunately, I don't have that additional move, and so at this point I have to either take or I have to lose the exchange. Which is worse? Well, both are bad actually. If I give up the exchange, it's just harder and harder for me because with less of the pieces on the board, these two open files are becoming very strong for black with their heavy pieces coming down. And if I have only one heavy piece left, it's harder for me to make sure that they don't infiltrate the position. So I decided I gotta take the knight, and here unfortunately black hits their connected passes, and now things are getting very dire. So there's no real clear move. What I'm hoping for is I want to either blockade their pawns in this way, or if they push in this way, I can blockade here. And in the meantime, maybe I can start piling up on one of their pawns. Apologies for the small earthquake. Maybe I can find some way to force them to, well, not this, because then obviously it will be a bit of a disaster. But at this point, then I can take, and their queen would still be hanging. So I keep having a look at the fact that these two queens are connected. Um, but black does not give me a chance like that. They just move their queen off the board. Really great board awareness, right? So the fact being that now that they've taken with this pawn, it opens up this diagonal again, but I don't have the large square bishop anymore. And so now actually, not only do they have a chance to push here, they can come in with the queen, but also my knight is hanging. So I have to either defend my knight with my king somewhere, or I have to move my knight to keep it safe. So a fantastic move. I was really unhappy to see it. And so I decided I gotta lash out in some way. I gotta try and find some counterplay. I'm clearly worse. I need to find a way to build some counterplay. The one advantage I have is that after they played DXC, they gave me more presence in the center of the board. And there's no clear win here or anything, but if I can move my d-pawn, I can get that square for my knight. If I get that square for my knight, maybe my knight becomes a bit more active on the queen side as well. It's a central square. It's a very good place to be. So I also stopped this diagonal situation that they've now found. So I decided to play the pawn, and this is indeed the engine's best move, but it's still a dire situation. Given an extra move, I'm obviously taking the queen, but alternatively, I could also try push, and then in some way, maybe we can do a pawn race where we trade off everything and I'm not completely losing. So after that, they do take though. I do get that square for my knight, and they find another great move coming across the other side. So they're still trying to come into these light squares around my king. And here there's no perfect move, right? So obviously they've got a a check here, which wins my knight, unless I jump it back. Oh no, sorry, what am I talking about? My rook's covering that. Anyway, I was feeling pretty nervous with the queen coming in. I'm also aware that if they come into the back here, they push my king out, and things could get very uncomfortable if they gobble up the rest of my pawns. So after this, I decided I got to defend that e-pawn of mine, and then even if they come in, I'm obviously calculating. Even if they come in, I can find a way to maybe push the queen out again. So I push, they do bring their queen, I bring my king up, very important. I get off from this h1 check, and I also protect myself from the f3 check. They also cannot take my knight trade because my rook's protecting it, and I know they're bringing the bishop, and here comes the bishop, and now I'm taking their queen. I'm just trying to find a good way to defend the position. Great move in between again, unfortunately. They block my queen from seeing my knight. I can't come here to defend it. So at this point, I'm kind of forced to either trade or to lose a piece. So if I, for instance, just move, they could try push, but this obviously comes with check, so that's really good. So I don't know. If I take like this, everything's just terrible. If I don't, I just lost another piece. So at this point, I take their queen, they take my queen, and then I go back. You see here now currently this is attacked, and this is attacked, and also this is currently not looking so great. So what I was looking at is I could maybe just attack it directly because I'm also defending, but after they take here, they're defending the pawn, the other rook is coming in. Things are looking not so good. Here, queen. So I drop my rook all the way back, so if they do take, I can take with my other rook. They don't. If they do this, I'm still defending over here. That's kind of what I was hoping. If they come at me like this, then I can go here, which means I'm also blocking the square from the other side, x-raying it. Actually, in this position, I think I'm doing a lot better. But black did not play that way. So they just queened immediately. And what queening immediately does is it takes my rook away from my knight because I can't jump my knight anyway. And the queen's just alive again. So take there, take there. And in this situation now, I am down a pawn and I'm down a minor piece. It is two isolated pawns for black though, and my king at least a little bit more active. So I'm hoping I can find some way to maybe kill one of these extra pawns, maybe find a way to get some more activity that brings me some advantage with the fact that we're still playing kind of in my backyard. Most of the action is happening on this side of the board, on my side of the board. So great move by them. They're just solidifying their b pawn, the only one currently under attack. They force me to move my rook, and after I attack the other pawn, they just solidify that as well with the bishop. So this is never a great idea with your bishop most of the time. In this case, though, it's great, obviously, because their bishop doesn't have to do any other job except keep all of these pawns safe, and they can slowly again work in their rooks if they need to. This whole file is still open, and although my king is active, it can't actually take anything here, and it can only get checked because this structure is completely unstoppable by a king, right? I can only take with my rooks. So up we go. In comes the rook. And here I did consider maybe something like this. So, you know, I'm just putting, no, maybe I'll put a move on the board. They don't check me, for instance. I could, for instance, do something like this, but at the end of the day, I cannot defend the other end of the board anymore. So because the position is opening up and I've got a connected chain that's connected or that is based on h2, it's really hard for me to keep everything safe, especially with the rook down. So I just decided to move my other rook over. I'm wondering if I can find some way to at least stop them from coming in. So I'm thinking if they're going to play down to a2, I'm going to play rook over here. I'm happy to trade rooks because maybe at some point there I can still find that one of their rooks only remaining on the board gives me a chance to put my rook on the other side. Maybe I can actually find a way to push this e-pawn forward. Unfortunately, they just bring the other rook, and now I'm trying to just blockade. And at this point, I'm clearly lost. I decided I wasn't going to resign just yet, and this is not to be disrespectful of my opponent, but this is a great chance for me to play someone like this, and I wanted to get the game to continue just a little bit longer. I'm happy to be crushed completely into the ground instead of just resigning with the crushing on the horizon. I'd prefer to just see it coming on the board. So we played a little bit more. I traded the rook. I decided to block the pawn with the other rook. He just, again, great position by the bishop, just keeping both pawns completely safe. At this point, I could sack, for instance, my rook for the other pawn and bishop, but then he would still have a rook running around the board. I'm up no pawns anymore at that point, and my king can't keep everything together. So I decided, okay, well, we're going to go on the other side. Here's a little nice, interesting thing. He could have gone the other way as well, but okay. So for instance, I take here, he comes across, I go up, and great way to finish the game. He sacks his rook on e5 because at that point his bishop is keeping my rook completely locked in, right? What a terrible position to be in. And after this, his pawn's just gonna run. I can't catch it anymore, and that's clearly GG. So at this point, after he took with his rook, I called it a day. I thanked him for the game. We went and had a great conversation afterwards. And unfortunately, I didn't get any more points out of my sixth round, but I still finished basically on the same level as my seeding. So I think I finished 14th out of the total of 46 players in this tournament, which I was fairly happy with. And I had a great time playing a lot of people. I played someone now in reverse order, I guess, but from France, from the Philippines, from Japan, from the UK, and from Taiwan. So a great, great tournament, fantastic venue, beautiful, beautiful location in Gion, and just yeah, just all around a fantastic experience. Thank you very much for everyone who watched. Thank you very much for everyone who played, for the tournament organizers. Yeah, and again, thank you very much for Julian. I had a great time playing against him as well. All right, so that wraps up this tournament. Thank you very much for those of you who followed along for it. I don't think I'll be doing these long form videos for all my tournaments or for all my games, but I really, really enjoyed coming back onto YouTube, so I was excited to put a few more videos up or just getting into each of these games because the tournament was so much fun. All right, so see you around. Ciao.